Welcome to the Sweepstakes College Baseball podcast where we talk everything college baseball. We're now 9 weeks into the season, so just around that halfway point, and there has been a lot of exciting news recently, particularly with some SEC schools like LSU and Florida continuing to somewhat collapse. Both those teams, preseason top 5 teams, and it seems like every year there are a few SEC schools that do not live up to their expectation, and it seems like those are the teams right now that are doing so. You never know, sometimes those teams end up winning the national championship in the end, but right now they are falling off a cliff, and potentially a few other SEC schools might be joining them. I've been known to be a Vanderbilt hater, and they have been looking a little bit shaky recently, but we have seen them playing pretty well. But yeah, a lot of these SEC schools at the very top have not had the best halfway point of the season.
Yeah, LSU's looking to continue the trend of potentially 3 straight national champions not making the postseason the following year. Just absolutely unreal considering the amount of talent still on that roster. One of the better teams in the country talent-wise. And, I think it's a team capable of pulling a similar run to Ole Miss to where they looked like they were going to miss the postseason and then went on to win the title. I think LSU has that type of talent, but right now they're just not playing anywhere near a competitive level, really.
Yeah, for sure. And guess we'll jump into Player of the Week after that little conversation. And that is held this week by Bryson Van Sickle, pitcher out of Utah. Had a complete game, gave up 0 runs, and struck out 8, which led the team to a very important series win where the Pac-12 looks like it's down this year, but Utah is in a pretty decent position to make a run and potentially make the postseason.
Yeah, the Pac-12 seems down, but Utah has completely turned things around. It's been a team that's been at the bottom of the standings practically every year for the most part. But right now they're looking like they're in the top 4 and looking like a team trying to make the postseason. I think if it ended right now, they're probably in. And this guy's a big reason why pitching like this. And so he's got below a 2.5 ERA on the season, and this is one of his better performances.
Yeah, taking advantage of the down conference this year, and there's a lot of teams mixing it up there where usually they're not maybe in the contention for making the postseason, but Utah is a team like that is, forcing their way into that conversation. And after that, we have our top play of the week, so we'll play that now.
To the infield. Stopped by LeBron. For the out, Justin LeBron, the freshman phenom at shortstop. Oh my, Justin LeBron. Thought there was no chance he touches it, much less catches it, and then stands up and fires a strike. Alton Davis, I'm about to say, he was probably the happiest guy in the stadium.
So this week it was Justin LeBron, shortstop for Alabama, with the really, really good play defensively, just completely smothering the ball in the infield and then throwing a dart over to first base to get the out. So just all around insane defensive play with stopping it with a diving play and then turning it around and being able to throw a dart to the first baseman.
Yeah, just an insane play, and especially given the situation, up 1 in the 9th, if they let that guy get on, if he gets a single there, they win it. Next batter with the game-tying home run, but would have been game winner or go ahead if that runner got on. So incredible play, and especially given the situation.
Yeah, for sure. And now time for our sweep setback of the week, and which goes to a team that had a maybe less than average week overall. There were a few teams up for contention this week, but we felt like the team that really epitomized that this week is UCF with just a terrible result. They just became ranked, had a really good streak of wins going into this weekend, and then ending up 0-4 for the week, losing their midweek and then getting swept at West Virginia, which, maybe their only good competition left this year and was not able to turn any sort of result there.
Yeah, UCF was starting to look like they may be the class of the Big 12 this year. Not many Big 12 teams ranked most of this year besides TCU in the beginning. Those teams have dwindled, and UCF was climbing up those rankings, but having an 0-4 week is just brutal, especially with, like you said, they don't really have a lot of tough competition left on the schedule. So to get swept by the last like regional playoff team that you're going to play, not really a good look, and definitely hurts the hosting chances for that squad.
Yeah, for sure. And then we'll jump right into our prediction results, where that was one of our series that we decided to try to predict. We took 5 series from the past week, and kind of decided which results we think were going to happen, and ended up, for me, going 4-1, Kevin going 2-3. The maybe most obvious pick here, which was Arkansas beating Alabama. We both decided to go for that, and that did not go our direction at all, with Alabama just having a very, very solid series win over what was number 1 Arkansas. And we mentioned the UCF West Virginia. I chose West Virginia with J.J. Weatherholt coming back. It seemed like they have really grabbed momentum again and could be in contention to take the Big 12 as a whole. And UCF is on the other side of things, and it's a real jumble in that conference as well. All over the place. Seems like there's a lot of teams just fighting for position right now.
Yeah, tough week for me overall, and tough especially in the 2 we went head-to-head on. They weren't even just series losses. The teams got swept, so just brutal to not even be close to being on the right side there. So tough week, and looking forward to rebounding this week coming up.
Yeah, I mean, at least overall, we had a positive record going, 6-4, because we did have a few positives on the teams we agreed on, with Texas A&M taking Vanderbilt out, and then Portland winning the series versus San Diego. So good to see that there, where we finally turn good results on our agreement picks, going 2-1 this week. But it would have been nice if Arkansas could have pulled out that series there and made the week a whole lot sweeter. But yeah, not terrible overall. We're still hovering around that 500 mark as a combined record, but definitely could be worse after the past week. But after that, jumping into our rankings this week, and we have a little bit of a switch up at the top with a new number 1 overall team, and that happens to be Texas A&M. Arkansas may have stayed in that spot if A&M wasn't able to pull off the sweep versus Vanderbilt, but that didn't happen. And yeah, Texas A&M just looked dominant this week, especially over the weekend. Vanderbilt didn't really stand a chance, especially those first 2 games. It was just a complete whitewash.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that Arkansas and A&M are just really close at this point. If A&M doesn't sweep, I probably do keep Arkansas 1 there. Was slightly considering it, even with A&M sweeping Vandy. Still do like Arkansas's pitching staff more moving forward, but we kind of saw the offensive struggles come out again this weekend. It happened earlier in the year where they weren't really clicking on all cylinders. Then they started to get going, but kind of absent this weekend, and hopefully not an issue moving forward. Don't think it will be too big of one, but yeah, both these teams are looking like the class of the SEC right now, and the 2 best teams in the country.
Yeah, and we'll jump to 2 now with Arkansas. Feels like, I mean, they don't really need that much run support with the pitching staff that they have, but potentially on the road could be, have 1 down or 2 down games from a pitcher giving up, 1 or 2 extra runs than they usually do, and that can really decide a series if the offense isn't as superb as we've seen. But Arkansas, isn't really led by their offense. It's really just the pitching staff there, and even though they did lose the weekend series, it was on the road, it was against a ranked opponent, and they did pick up two wins in the midweek, so that was fine. Finishing still positive record-wise, so really could have been worse there.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly difficult to go through an entire SEC slate without dropping a series. And yeah, I think we've only seen it done once before, and I think it was by the Arkansas team a couple years ago. But yeah, just not really that down of a week. Still good overall, and yeah, we'll see how they rebound on the road again this week.
Next, at number 3, we now have Tennessee going up 1 spot from last week after a 4-0 week and sweeping LSU on the weekend. What would have been a really nice series sweep a few weeks ago, now not looking amazing, but still impressive result overall. Really close to that top 2, I'd say, but was just a little bit behind before this week. But definitely closed the gap to at least Arkansas and staying, point for point with Texas A&M right now.
Yeah, really good week, even though LSU's a bit down. Still just really good to go 4-0. Sweeping them in the SEC is always a good thing, especially with how talented LSU is. I do think there's just a slight drop from Arkansas and A&M down to Tennessee. I don't think Tennessee's quite as complete, especially on the mound. But this offense just continues to put up crazy numbers. And yeah, they could be a little better offensively than both of those clubs. So still a really good outlook, and yeah, great week getting the sweep.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee has the arm talent to be able to have those top end arms that can just take over a game. They have been a little bit inconsistent this year, but we've seen in the past when an SEC, team gets hot, it's always kind of relying on just a few really good arms, and Tennessee has that potential there. Just need to make everything click at the right time, but the offense can carry for the most part. But yeah, after that, we have Clemson at 4, moving down 2 spots. This past week was a golden opportunity for them to be able to jump into that number 1 spot, and just not able to take care of that opportunity going versus NC State at home, and was not able to get the job done there. Just NC State have no idea what this team is. Seems like every other week they're doing something out of the ordinary, whether that be losing to a team that they should easily beat or, taking down what was the number 2 team in the nation this past week. NC State continues to surprise in the weirdest ways, and this week Clemson was on the wrong end of it.
Yeah, similar to Arkansas, this Clemson offense just wasn't really there this weekend. And that's kind of a bit more surprising because we've seen them win a lot of scrappy, high scoring games. But this is their first series loss on the year. They have a lot of quality wins, a lot of quality series wins. So not that discouraging of a week. It's just, I'd say, a little extra disappointing that it came at home.
Yeah, for sure. But I think there is was at least a definite gap after these top 4 teams, just the competition they've played week in, week out, kind of separated them from the next grouping of teams. But in that 5 spot, we have Oregon State staying there after winning the series versus Stanford this past week. Nothing spectacular. They did lose the final game for the sweep, so maybe would have helped them a little more if they were able to pull that off. But Oregon State continues to put together a really, really solid resume. It's just the competition they're playing isn't the best at the moment.
Yeah, still look like the class of the Pac-12. Had that rough week on the road at USC, but otherwise have taken care of business and have looked extremely strong this year altogether. Played a really competitive game against Arkansas earlier in the year, so they have fared well when they have played tough competition. But like you said, there just hasn't been much of it up to this point.
Yep, for sure. And then at number 6, we have Kentucky going up 4 spots from last week after sweeping Auburn on the road. Now still only have 1 conference loss, sitting at 14-1. I mean, they've taken care of business. They haven't faced the cream of the crop in the SEC yet, but the schedule is definitely taking a turn for the worse now. But Kentucky did all they could at the first half of their schedule in the conference, and now they're going to kind of go through the ringer, and if they can pull out wins every now and then they still could potentially rise up the rankings and take off some more SEC teams.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't played the toughest competition, but they've done an incredible job just racking up the wins, taking care of business. I mean, they can probably go 500 from here on out and still be a top 8 seed. That's just how many quality wins they have at this point. And they've just completely taken care of everything that's been handed to them up to this point. Super tough schedule ahead, but I like the outlook of them. They're looking really consistent right now.
Yeah, I mean, most teams don't win all the time against, average opponents, and the SEC, for the most part, is better than average opponents. Even the worst SEC teams this year can beat anybody, and Kentucky did not let that happen to any of the teams they've really faced. Their 1 loss is to Missouri, which might have surprised people a few weeks ago, but Missouri has taken off a few teams here now. They've gotten a few quality wins, even though they're not going to jump off the paper and probably take down a top team. They have shown that they're competitive, and yeah, Kentucky was able to win that series, and that's their only conference loss. So super impressive, and yeah, really just took care of all the business they have had to do so far. But after that, at 7, we have Florida State moving up 2 from last week after going 4-0, finishing off the series, I guess the midweek series sweep versus Florida, their final game there, now 3-0 versus Florida, and then sweeping Miami. So all the in-state rivals, they crushed this year. And so Florida State still sitting at 5 losses now, and maybe they haven't faced the best ACC teams yet, but they've shown that they can beat any team by, taking care of business on the midweeks versus Florida. And Miami is a team that has been very competitive, just maybe a bit unlucky with their results, and has faced a very tough schedule as well.
Yeah, I think Florida State has a really sneaky good resume at this point. 30-5 overall. 3 of those losses are to Clemson, and those games were very competitive for the most part. 2 games that they probably should have won. I can't really say that looking back in hindsight, but I mean, in the moment, that you had Clemson on the ropes, and I think that's a really good sign for Florida State moving forward. Similar to Kentucky, they've just been consistent and handled business for the most part. And yeah, also similarly have a kind of backloaded conference schedule, but I do think they'll fare pretty well through that.
Yep, and next up we have another ACC team in Virginia staying in that spot. Even though they won their conference series, there were just a few teams that maybe deserved to jump over them a bit, and those being Kentucky and Florida State. But Virginia, super solid week, 3-1, and going to Louisville, which have kind of turned around their season recently. They have a pretty solid record now. Not the best RPI, but yeah, going on the road to a team that has looked pretty solid, and winning the series there is still a good result, just not really any room to move up here.
Yeah, solid week, and this offense just continues to put up crazy numbers, kind of similar to Tennessee. I mean, just a lot of games on the weekends with double-digit runs. Yeah, just absolutely smashing the ball, and yeah, continuing to play well through conference play. And yeah, Louisville was playing pretty well heading into this weekend, so definitely a solid series win.
Yeah, next up at 9, another ACC team going the back-to-back-to-back with Duke. It was the same 3 teams, just a different order last week. Duke dropping back 2 spots after going 2-2 this week, losing their midweek, and then winning the weekend series at Pitt. So not a terrible week overall. Usually you don't see teams really drop that much if they win their weekend series, but Pitt isn't the best competition. And so probably would have liked to see a 3-1 week overall, no matter how that came, but not able to get that done, so dropping back a few spots here.
Yeah, not the best week, and not the worst week either. Not a big worry, like you said. Good to win the weekend series. Just 2-2 week, just not super exciting, and so just maintaining position and still in the top 10, so can't complain.
Yep, and then finishing out the top 10, we have East Carolina moving up 1 spot after going 4-1, winning 2 midweeks, and then winning the weekend series versus Charlotte. So overall, maybe not the best opponent on the weekend, but got the job done. Need to do that week in, week out to be considered one of the best mid-majors, and East Carolina continues to prove it. They're consistently up there, while other teams are bouncing around them. East Carolina just consistently getting it done for the most part.
Yeah, nice to pick up those couple midweek games. When you're a top mid-major, a 2-in week never looks all that exciting if you're not playing great competition. So tack those midweeks on, and you get a 4-in-1 week. It looks nice, and yeah, handling business as they should against these lesser opponents, and yeah, looking like one of the better teams in the country overall.
Yeah, next up we have North Carolina moving up 2 spots to 11. 3-1 week, lost their midweek to South Carolina, so bit unfortunate there, but then getting a series sweep versus Notre Dame, so getting the job done on the weekend, just against the better competition. Not quite able to get the win there, so could have definitely jumped up maybe 1 more spot over East Carolina if they're able to pull off that 4-0 week, but not able to win the toughest game.
Yeah, definitely need a really complete week for them to jump East Carolina, since they lost that head-to-head series against them. but a midweek win over South Carolina would have been really quality. Still nice to get the sweep on the week. They've continued to play pretty well through ACC play and look like they're in that towards that upper tier.
Yep, and next up at 12 we have Wake Forest after going 3-1, winning the midweek game versus Coastal Carolina, and then winning the series at Boston College. So impressive week. This team looked like they were trending in the same direction as teams like LSU and Florida, but they quickly turned it around right as Nick Kurtz seemingly got fully healthy again. They had some other injuries that are definitely clearing up. And Wake Forest completely turning it around the past few weeks. Yeah, as a team that almost dropped out of our top 25, now solidly at 12. Really impressive and definitely getting hot at the right time here.
Yeah, like you said, it looks like this team was headed towards the gutter, right, with LSU and Florida, but Nick Kurtz is absolutely smashing the ball right now. Don't count him out in the home run race with the rate he's going right now. He's absolutely on fire, and yeah, it looks like this team's just clicking more offensively. Not quite as shaky on the mound either. I mean, you still have Chase Burns once a weekend, so it feels like you get a win going into the weekend, and looks like other guys are starting to throw a little better as well, and we'll see how that progresses as the season wraps up.
Yeah, definitely. And now at 13, we have Vanderbilt dropping back 7 spots this past week after going 1-3 and getting swept at what was number 3 Texas A&M, now in that number 1 spot after this just dominant performance versus Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt just looked like they did not want to be there at all the first few games. Competitive in the final game there, but just too little too late at that point. Texas A&M was rolling and the offense just did not stop.
Yeah, it's kind of a bit concerning for Vanderbilt now. This is their second time getting swept on the road, and both of those sweeps, they were just absolutely dominated. It wasn't really competitive, so kind of brings in some worry as far as their competitiveness against top competition when they're on the road. They're very solid at home, have handled business in SEC play when they're at home, but you got to be able to put things together on the road. And even if you're playing tough teams, you'd still like to see 1-2 on the weekend if you're on the road. Yeah, just haven't really had that consistency home and away.
Yeah, you just got to scrap one win away on when you're facing a team like Texas A&M. That's still a decent result. Going 2-2 on the week, that's kind of the expected if you're on the road there. But Vanderbilt just completely different for home and away splits. They're on a 15-win streak at home, and definitely struggling on the road against that tougher competition. But after that, at 14, we have UC Irvine. After this, it seems like, right at that Vanderbilt area, it seems like there's a gap. UC Irvine was at 12, dropping back 2 spots. It really should be dropping back more. They went 1-3, losing their midweek and then losing the weekend series. Sure, all their games were on the road, but you want to at least go 2-2 there. It was against good competition, but like we mentioned earlier, you got to take care of business against the good teams when you're a mid-major, and UC Irvine has done that for the most part this year, so that's why they were up that high at number 12, and lucky this week that a lot of teams in that middle of the pack area decided to have bad weeks, so UC Irvine really not getting punished here more than they probably should. But at this point, UC Irvine probably should have dropped to 16, 18, but sitting at 14 because of the teams around that area not having good weeks.
Yeah, just a really a lost opportunity this week with them playing good competition, playing against USC in the midweek, and then UC San Diego on the weekend. A 3-1 week there. You're going to see them edging closer to potentially being in the top 10. Not sure they would have cracked in there, but they would have been knocking on the door. And that's really impressive for a Big West school in a season where the West Coast is really down RPI wise and just teams in general. So still have a good outlook on this team, but definitely a disappointing week and a lost opportunity.
Yep, for sure. And now at 15, we have Oregon after going 3-2 on the week, going 1-1 midweek, and then winning the weekend series versus USC. So overall, they just continue to win weekend series in conference, not getting any sweeps. So really could push the needle there a little bit more, but just solid results all around. And jumping up a few spots here because a lot of the teams in that middle of the pack area did not do well. So maybe on a regular week they stay around that same area because of their overall 3-2. Not super amazing since their midweek games weren't against great competition, but yeah, just taking advantage of this week's top 25.
Yeah, nothing spectacular, but they've won all 5 of their conference series, and definitely have to give it to a team that's consistent. I mean, we saw it with Florida early in the year with them staying in the top 10, even though they were 2-2 every week, but they were consistently winning every weekend series. And that does say a lot, even if it's not against great competition or if you're not getting the sweeps. So Oregon's still building a solid resume, and you'll take all those series wins for sure.
Yep, and now at 16 we have Dallas Baptist after going 1-2 on the week, losing the weekend series at Air Force, similar to UC Irvine. Definitely could have dropped more in a normal week, but this week wasn't that normal in that middle area, so only dropping back a few spots here. So lucky in that regard, but overall they've put together a really solid resume. Just a down week here on the road.
Yeah, a couple rough weeks in a row now with that series loss to Western Kentucky and now the series loss at Air Force. Not too down on the team overall, but you'd certainly like to see them win at least one of those series, potentially both. You want to take advantage when you're playing some decent competition. And yeah, I think this was a tough one, similar to UC Irvine. There was a good opportunity to move up and get close to the top 10, but just not able to take advantage.
Yep. And next up at 17, we have Alabama after going 2-2 on the week. So not a great overall record, but they took down what was number 1 Arkansas. So getting that is a real resume builder. This Alabama team was just on the fringe of going out of the top 25. And, at that, before this past week, definitely thought that was a very solid option of what was going to happen, looking at the schedule ahead with Arkansas coming up. But they really turned it on for that series and maybe got a little lucky with their walk off there. But sometimes you need a little luck, and they kept it close. And yeah, it was a tough series win, and yeah, Alabama just got the job done there. So even though going 2-2, they still impressed.
Yeah, really, really impressive weekend for Alabama. Their pitching staff hasn't looked, top tier most of the season, but they really limited Arkansas's offense. Might not be the most explosive offense in the country, but it was a team that hadn't lost a series to this point and was just continuing to win nearly every game. So holding that team to limited runs on the weekend and being able to get that series win definitely says a lot.
Yeah, and next up at 18, we have Oklahoma State after going 4-0 this past week, winning and the midweek and then sweeping the weekend series versus Cincinnati. So jumping up 5 spots this past week. Impressive results, taking care of business. They've really got everything clicking right now. And yeah, they're looking like definitely one of the top teams in the Big 12 and potentially the contender for that conference.
Yeah, the Big 12 has been really tough to read this year, but Oklahoma State has strung together a few good weekends in a row right now. And I mean, we saw it earlier in the year, how competitive they could be when they took down Arkansas, first team to do so. And so we know they're able to play at a high level. They just weren't doing that consistently throughout the year. But up till now, last couple of weeks, they've been looking good. And yeah, certainly some opportunity with the down year in the Big 12. They might be able to snag a hosting spot even without the best year.
Yep, for sure. And now at 19, we have Louisiana going up 3 spots after a 4-1 week, losing their midweek versus Louisiana Tech. So a bit unfortunate there. But yeah, overall, weekend series was able to sweep. So good results there. It was tough. You want to be able to take advantage of that midweek. And they weren't able to in this instance. And Marshall wasn't the best weekend series, but got the job done there, was able to sweep. So jumping up a few spots, they've been pretty solid recently, super consistent. So one loss against a midweek team isn't going to really dwindle them too much, especially in a week like this week where a lot of teams around them were losing.
Yeah, can't complain too much. Definitely would like that midweek, but this team's playing well right now, especially the pitching staff, giving up 8 runs in the last 2 weekends. So super impressive, limiting those teams to very few runs, especially in conference play. So I mean, they're handling business right now and looking like a solid team right now.
Yep, for sure. And now at 20, we have NC State jumping up 4 spots, similar to Alabama, a team that looked like they were going to be on the outs of the top 25 this coming week, and then they somehow pull off their best weekend of the year. Even though they lose their midweek, they turn it around on the weekend, and here NC State goes to Clemson, what was the number 2 team in the nation, and wins the series there. Could have even potentially swept since they won the first 2 games, had the opportunity to do so, and that would have been ridiculous, as NC State has been one of the most up and down teams this season. When they're clicking, they're can compete with the best team out there, as you can see from the results this past week, but they have definitely had their down weeks where they face teams and lose to them that they definitely should be taken care of.
Yeah, second time this season that this team's looked down and out for the count, ready to drop out of the rankings. But earlier in the year, they took that series against Duke, and now they do it again on the fringe of dropping out. They win the series at Clemson, prevent Clemson from becoming the number 1 team in the country. And so, yeah, NC State, super inconsistent, but when they're clicking, they can hang with anyone in the country.
Yep, for sure. And at 21, we have Coastal Carolina dropping 2 spots after going 2-2, losing their midweek at Wake Forest. So unfortunate there, tough competition, not able to get the job done, and then going on the road, winning the series versus Georgia Southern. So good job, good results there. But this is the second week they've gone 2-2, even though they won both their weekend series. Like to see them be able to get more wins in their stat sheet, and just unfortunate that they're not able to do that on a consistent level. Last week we kept them in that 19th spot, but just dropping back a few here because it's the second week in a row where they had a 2-2 week, even though they're winning the weekends.
Yeah, just more and more as this season progresses, it's seeming like Coastal's above average good team, but not a great team. Just lacking a bit on the pitching staff. This offense can hang with anyone, but not quite as complete of a team as last year and as we hoped coming into the year. Still solid. That's why you see him in the top 25 and winning a quality series against a team like Georgia Southern. But yeah, just not super complete.
Yep. Next up at 22, we have our first entrance in the top 25 with West Virginia after a 3-1 week, losing their midweek, but then sweeping what was number 16 UCF. And they've really started to turn things around since J.J. Weatherholt has been coming back. And now that he's fully healthy and back in the lineup, he's seeming like the spark plug that this team needed to be able to put them back into contention. And they have a really, really solid conference record now and definitely vying for that top spot.
Yeah, certainly putting things together right now, and they actually have a better RPI than I'd expect at this point. So if they continue to play well through the end of the Big 12 conference play, you could see them actually snag a hosting spot. And sometimes all it takes is getting a couple players healthy to spark plug a team, get them playing well. We've seen it with Wake Forest as well. So not sure West Virginia is quite on that level, but they're playing well right now, and we'll see how things finish up throughout conference play.
Yep. And at 23, we have Mississippi State. After going 1-2, dropping back 3 spots, they lost the weekend series at Ole Miss. Super competitive the first few games there. Last one not so much, but definitely was the series was up for grabs for the first few games, and Ole Miss was able to snag it away from Mississippi State there. But Mississippi State has proven that they can compete with anyone pretty much in the conference. So don't want to drop them too far after a week like this. On the road, we've seen the SEC can be super difficult going on road series, but Mississippi State just on that edge of being on the outside looking in now.
Yeah, I think I might peg Mississippi State as my second unluckiest team in the SEC. They just have a ton of one-run losses, and they've played pretty well through SEC play. Just a game under 500, have some quality series wins, and it's tough to win on the road at Ole Miss. Don't necessarily expect them to win the series. Definitely want them to, since they're ranked and Ole Miss isn't, and they're just having a better year than Ole Miss in general. But they just have a lot of one-run losses at this point, and you'd like to see them turn that around, be able to win a couple extra games, and kind of move themselves up into the next tier.
Yeah, and rivalry series are always tough to gauge. There's always going to be a little bit more passion and tough to know exactly how players are going to be reacting to that kind of thing. And Ole Miss was able to just edge them out in that category, it seems like. But now at 24, we have South Carolina also jumping back into the rankings after a 3-1 week, going to UNC, getting the midweek win there, and then at Florida, winning the weekend series. So all against ranked teams, and ending up going 3-1 on the week is very impressive. This South Carolina team seems like they're just bouncing in and out of the top 25 without the extreme consistency that you would want to see, but they just keep facing tough opponents, and one week they'll be playing well and the next not. So tough to keep them out when they have a week like this, though.
Yeah, I think South Carolina was kind of in a similar boat to Alabama and NC State last week, but they kind of just got the wrong end of things, getting on the outside of the top 25. But they get things back on the right track. Solid series win over Florida and midweek over North Carolina, especially helps the week look well. 3-1 week against solid competition. So yeah, hopefully they can get things a little more consistent instead of bouncing back and forth. But overall, it's good to see them continuing to be competitive against good teams.
Yep, for sure. And now our last team in the top 25 this week is a new entrance as well, with Arizona in that spot after going 4-0 and sweeping Louisiana Tech on the weekend. Super good result. It was at home, so that gives them that advantage, but they have just been really turning things around lately. Have been super hot. So yeah, this Arizona team. Now I think this is the first time we've had 3 Pac-12 teams in the rankings in 1 week this year. So for the down year, it's looking like maybe things are slowly turning around for some of the top teams. And Arizona definitely starting to look like they're in contention for potentially the Pac-12 title if Oregon State slips up a little bit.
Yeah, this team was below 500 just 3 or 4 weeks ago, but now they have the longest win streak in the country with 11 wins in a row, playing extremely well the last couple weeks. And yeah, Pac-12 is a bit down this year, but Arizona's bouncing back and looking to be one of the few teams, maybe the few 3 or 4 teams that do make the tournament. And yeah, looking solid right now. And another team that has a better RPI than you'd expect right now, given their record and overall resume.
Yep, and with that we had 3 teams drop out, those being UCF, Florida, and Nebraska. So tough week for Florida schools there besides Florida State. UCF, yeah, going 0-4, getting swept at West Virginia. Tough look there, especially since they had a real good opportunity to continue to impress and potentially host if they're able to really ramp things up at the end. Florida, just now at 18-17, barely over 500, just a real tough look. They were kind of hovering around that point for a while, but continuing to win weekend series, so couldn't really drop them. And now it's the kind of other side of things where they're pretty much just losing everything, and it seems like it's time to panic for a team like that. But yeah, they still have all the opportunity in the world in the SEC to turn things around, but definitely not in the best spot. And then the last team that dropped out was Nebraska after a 1-3 week. They were in that 25 spot, so can't really have any slip-ups there, and losing the weekend series at Rutgers. Even though Rutgers seems like they're one of the better Big Ten teams, can't really do that in a conference where you're supposed to pretty much win every weekend series, especially if you want to stay ranked.
Yeah, tough weekends for those guys, and especially Florida. It's gonna be a while before you see them back in the rankings at this point with their overall record and just recent series losses. So tough week there. A couple schools I have on the outside looking in are Indiana State and Utah. Both just have very good overall resumes at this point. Indiana State, especially with the top 10 RPI. The only trouble is they haven't really played anyone good. So hard to gauge how they'll fare in those games, but they've handled business for the most part against lesser competition and have put together a really good resume up to this point.
Yeah, a few other teams that I'll mention are Lamar, Creighton, even though Creighton had a not great week this past week. Definitely would have liked to see them win their weekend series versus Xavier, and that did not happen. They could have been able to jump into the top 25 if that was the case. I think they were right on the outside looking in. They've had some pretty decent series results and midweeks. So definitely a bit unfortunate to lose out there. Definitely had the opportunity to jump in. Also, Texas Tech has just been hovering around that edge of the top 25. Just need a few good weekends to really turn things around and jump back in. But that's pretty much it. Maybe Campbell as well. They've obviously been in the rankings and dropped out recently, so there's still a chance for them to come back in. But a lot of these top teams recently that have dropped out, like LSU, TCU, Florida, we won't be seeing them for a while unless they can really start to get those conference wins back together. TCU looked like they got something. They're going in the right direction, unlike some of the other teams, but definitely want to see a few more weeks out of them before we can make a decision to bring them back in.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a long time before we see TCU re-enter that top 25. Kind of similar to Florida, to where we were giving them the benefit of the doubt for a while, but then they just collapsed. And so it's going to take more than 1 or 2 weeks to re-earn the committee's trust here. Got to see them put it together consistently, and they just haven't done that quite yet.
Yep, for sure. So that will be that for this episode of the Sweepstakes College Baseball Podcast. Remember to keep an eye out later in the week for our weekend series predictions. We got a lot of ranked versus ranked matchups this week, so it should be super exciting to see the results that happen over the weekend. And you can also keep an eye out for our best bets, which we cover each day on Twitter, where we think we will lose you some money if you take our advice. But yeah, should be a very exciting week, and we'll see you next time. Peace.